Great, it's working. Welcome.
Құрметті азаматтар, біз басталғалы отырмыз. Dear colleagues, we are going to start. Please take your seats. So podium is here. All our distinguished speakers are ready. So, please, Dr. El Sanusi.
Well, good afternoon to everyone. Welcome and assalamu alaikum and peace be upon all of you. My name is Mohammed El Sanusi. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, as well as I am serving as a commissioner on the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. Let me just make a few remarks to begin the session, and then I will pass it on to my co-moderator here in just a minute. I just want to really begin by sending our gratitudes to the government of Kazakhstan for a marvelous and remarkable organizations of the 8th Congress. This particular Congress, in this particular time, it comes at the time where the globe is looking for moral leadership. The entire globe is looking for partnership between religious and traditional leaders and government to address the problem that we're facing today. So our session this afternoon is titled on Faith Against Extremism, the Peace-Building Potential of Religions. So the role of religious leaders and religious actors is very critical, but it is underutilized. And we need to find the best mechanisms to further utilize the role of religious and traditional actors so that we can address issues of violence and extremism and all of that. So, you know, this session, we wanted to be dialogical, conversational. So you're going to see that. You're going to see our panel today. They're going to have a dialogue, and we're going to come to you as well. But before we get into this, I am really delighted and honored to co-moderate this session with Ambassador Khairat Sarabhai. You know, Ambassador Sarabhai is the Secretary General, actually the first Secretary General of the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia. So you lovely call it SICA. So the ambassador previously also served as the executive director of SICA Secretariat before the position was transformed into a Secretary General post as a part of the comprehensive SICA transformation. You know, I could spend the rest of this afternoon just talking about the marvelous accomplished of my co-moderator, the ambassador. Because ambassador, you joined the foreign ministry in 1991. 1991. He's a seasoned diplomat. And he, of course, served in a number of capacities in his role as a diplomat, as a deputy foreign minister, as the assistant to the president, as serving his country outside in a number of posts. And now he is among the founders of SICA. It's an alliance of countries, and he will talk more about it. But Ambassador, without any further ado, I want to give you the floor.
Thank you. You humbled me very much, Dr. El Sanusi. But I would like to welcome all. And of course, I would like to express my appreciation to the organizers, to the chair of Senate, Mr. Maulana Shimbaya, for inviting me to this stage as a moderator. My main task is to facilitate the dialogue, and I will encourage all our distinguished speakers, and you see how rich our panel today, and the topic is very much relevant to, as my co-moderator, Dr. El Sanusi mentioned, my dear friend Mohammed, the topic is very pertinent to our times, and I'm very delighted to be a co-moderator at this session. I would like to ask our distinguished speakers to allow the audience also to put some questions or to make the comments. That is why I will ask you to keep your interventions fruitful, of course, full of thoughts, but nevertheless very concise, limiting maybe to 5 or 6 minutes. I have only one agreement with one of our speakers that if he will play some jokes, then his time will be extended up to 8 minutes. So you're all welcome to tell good narratives, to tell, to bring the vividity to our discussions. And I will very shortly brief what is SICA, as it was promised by Mohammed. Yes, indeed, it's a vast Pan-Asian international organization, which was initiated back in 1992 by Kazakhstan from the rostrum of the UN General Assembly. And nowadays we are 28 member states covering 90% of Asia. And we have a very much comprehensive approach to security, although we have the economic dimension, we have humanitarian dimension, we have environmental dimension, and many others. But in particular, our member states also cooperate on combating terrorism, a very pressing priority area, unfortunately, no less relevant today than ever before. So that is actually connects me to the topic of our today's session, Faiths Against Extremism. Once again, I hope that our speakers will explore how religious leaders and communities can effectively counter extremism, promote the peaceful resolution of conflicts, and strengthen global solidarity and mutual understanding, echoing what's exactly yesterday here in this Palace of Independence, His Excellency President Tokayev mentioned in his very comprehensive and strong statement. Well, this is my role of today, and I'm delighted to give back the floor to my co-moderator, dear Mohammed, please.
You know, Ambassador, thank you so much, and I'm glad that you mentioned what President Tokayev said yesterday, but I also recall in 2022 Congress, I was here in Astana, President Tokayev in his opening remarks said what? Said religious and traditional actors, they are the weapons of the 21st century. What does that mean? That means they do have a soft power. They need to utilize that to address issues of peace and security. So that's really, just want to mention that and appreciate what happened 3 years ago and today. But as my colleague moderator, Ambassador Sarbaye said now, we are going to have a dialogue. And Ambassador, this is a session that is between us and lunch, right? So that's why we need to be also dialogical here. So our first speaker in this session is Dr. Yusuf Muhammad Ad-Dubai. Dr. Ad-Dubai is Assistant Secretary General of Political Affairs of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. He basically, and the OIC, the Islamic Cooperation Organization, represent 57 countries. It is the second largest multilateral organization in the world. So we're so happy to have you. You can look online for his extensive bio, but without further ado, I want to present this to you, Assistant Secretary, so you can tell us about the critical role that OIC is doing in to address issues of violent extremism. The floor is yours, Your Excellency.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أولا، إن كان هناك كلمة تقال في هذا الجمع الطيب فباسم منظمة التعاون الإسلامي نرفع أسمى آيات الشكر والتقدير إلى فخامة رئيس جمهورية كازاخستان، وأيضا إلى معالي رئيس مجلس الشيوخ على دعوة منظمة التعاون الإسلامي لحضور هذه الدورة الثامنة للقادة الدينيين. والحقيقة قبل أن نتحدث عن موضوع هذا الحوار اليوم، من المهم معرفة أن منظمة التعاون الإسلامي هي منظمة دولية يبلغ عدد أعضائها 57 دولة من آسيا ومن أفريقيا ومن العرب وأيضا من الأوروبيين، وهي ثاني أكبر منظمة تعتبر بعد الأمم المتحدة. وهذه المنظمة تتميز بأنها خليط من الدول الإسلامية، فكل الصراعات للأسف نقولها ونحن حزينون أن هناك دراسات أثبتت بأن 70% من هذه الصراعات في العالم هي تقع في نطاق دول منظمة التعاون الإسلامي. ومن هذا المنطلق الحقيقة منظمة التعاون الإسلامي كانت حريصة كل الحرص دائما وأبدا أن تبذل جهود ومساعي لتخفيف حدة الصراعات. ليس بالضرورة أن يكون الوساطة تؤدي إلى نجاح تام، ولكن تحاول أن تخفف من حدة هذه التوترات التي تحدث في العالم. ولا شك أن القادة الدينيين أيضا لهم دور، ويجب أن يتجاوز دور القادة الدينيين اليوم موضوع الفتوى والوعظ والإرشاد إلى الدخول في صلب هذه النزاعات، ولتساعد أيضا المنظمات الدولية الحكومية، وأنا أقصد الحكومية التي تحكمها مواثيق وتحكمها أنظمة وتحكمها قواعد لا يمكن أن تتجاوز، لأنه للأسف هناك خلط وفارق دقيق جدا بين الوساطة وحل المشكلة وبين التدخل. هذا الحقيقة هذه الشعرة بين المصطلحين تجعل من الدول دائما أو المنظمات الدولية أن تحاول قدر المستطاع أن تكون حريصة كل الحرص على أن لا تتدخل في الشأن الداخلي للدولة. وهذا مبدأ الحقيقة، مبدأ في الأمم المتحدة، ومبدأ في الاتحاد الأفريقي، ومبدأ في الآسيان، ومبدأ في الOIC، ومبدأ في الجامعة العربية، ومبدأ في المنظمات الأخرى كمجلس التعاون. فبالتالي هناك يعني تخوف شديد بين التدخل وبين بذل المساعي إن صح التعبير والوساطة. منظمة التعاون الإسلامي إذا يعني سمحتم لي، عندما تنظروا إلى الميثاق فتجدوا في الديباجة مكافحة الإرهاب، الدعوة إلى التسامح، الدعوة إلى الحوار، التنمية، التدخل في حلحلة هذه الصراعات، كلها أكدتها منظمة التعاون الإسلامي. ولا يخلو قمة إسلامية ولا اجتماعا لمجلس وزراء الخارجية الذي يعبر عنه 57 دولة إسلامية اليوم إلا تجد تعزيز الحوار، وأيضا مكافحة الإرهاب. ومنظمة التعاون الإسلامي أيضا من يتابع أعمالها ويتابع قراراتها ويتابع مشاريعها يجد أن الإرهاب على سلم أولويات جدول أعمال منظمة التعاون الإسلامي. فلا يمكن أن يأتي قمة أو مجلس وزراء لخارجية الدول الإسلامية إلا وهناك قرار أو قرارين حول مكافحة الإرهاب والتطرف والدعوة إلى الحوار والسلام والتنمية بين الدول الأعضاء. اليوم منظمة التعاون الإسلامي اليوم تميزت بشيء جديد لا يوجد لا في الأمم المتحدة ولا في أي منظمة دولية، وهو مكافحة الإسلاموفوبيا. ومكافحة الإسلاموفوبيا اليوم يعتبر على بند أساسي من بنود جدول أعمال منظمة التعاون الإسلامي. والحقيقة الدول الإسلامية سعت كثير في الأمم المتحدة، وخصوصا عندما حدث ما حدث في نيوزيلندا، وأصدرت قرار من الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة بأن يكون 15 مارس من كل عام احتفالا لمكافحة الإسلاموفوبيا. وعلى أثر هذا القرار الحقيقة تم اتخاذ قرارين مهمين جدا لمحاولة تخفيف الحدة من الصراعات التي للأسف تنسب إلى الإسلام وتنسب إلى المسلمين، والإسلام والمسلمين براء. ماذا يعني حرق مصحف في ساحة عامة؟ ماذا يعني الازدراء بالأديان؟ ماذا يعني التعرض إلى المقدسات الإسلامية أو غير الإسلامية؟ وإنما أنا أتكلم على الإسلام وما يتعرض له الإسلام مع احترامنا لكافة الأديان. ولكن عندما يأتي شخص أو منظمة أو تجمع بحرق حرق الكتب الدينية أو الإساءة إلى الرموز الدينية أو الازدراء بالأديان، وينعت هذا التصرف بأنه حرية شخصية، فهذا غير مقبول. وعلى ضوء ذلك قام الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة أيضا بتعيين مبعوث خاص، وحضر في حفل الافتتاح وألقى كلمة، ولنا تعاون مثمر معه. وأيضا الأمين العام لمنظمة التعاون الإسلامي أيضا عين مبعوث خاص لمكافحة الإسلاموفوبيا. عندما ننظر أيضا إلى مجمع الفقه الإسلامي التابع لمنظمة التعاون الإسلامي، وهو الجهاز المختص في التعامل فيما يتعلق في موضوع الأديان وموضوع التجاوزات وموضوع الإفتاء وموضوع لم المسلمين الدول الأعضاء حول قضية معينة. دور الأديان هنا والقادة الدينيين أيضا لهم دور. صدر قرار من مجلس وزراء الخارجية عندما حصل ما حصل في أفغانستان وكان هناك مشكلة في تعليم المرأة، قرروا الدول الأعضاء بإيفاد مجموعة من العلماء المسلمين للتحدث مع حكومة طالبان حول أهمية تعليم المرأة، وأن المرأة هي جزء أو هي الوجه الآخر إلى الرجل، وبالتالي الشريعة الإسلامية أو الدين الإسلامي لا يحرم تعليم المرأة، بل بالعكس الإسلام كرم المرأة على أكمل وجه. وأقيمت مؤتمرات في أندونيسيا وأقيمت مؤتمرات في جدة حول المرأة في الإسلام لإيصال رسالتنا للعالم بأن الإسلام هو الذي رسم حياة بني آدم بصورة عامة وليس المرأة والرجل أو المسلم. منظمة التعاون الإسلامي أيضا عندما تنظر إلى مكافحة الإرهاب والتطرف تجد أن هناك مدونة سلوك لقواعد مكافحة الإرهاب صدرت منذ عام 94، وتجد أيضا أن هناك اتفاقية لمكافحة الإرهاب صدرت عام 1999. الوساطة عندما تتتبع عمل منظمة التعاون الإسلامي تجد لها باع طويل في حدة هذه الصراعات بين الدول الإسلامية. لنا دور في مالي، لنا دور في أفغانستان، لنا دور في السودان، لنا دور في دول الساحل، لنا دور أيضا في جنوب الفلبين، ولنا دور أيضا في جنوب تايلاند. كل هذه المساعي التي قامت بها منظمة التعاون الإسلامي نحن الجزء الآخر من القادة الدينيين. القادة الدينيين يتحركون لتخفيف هذه الصراعات بتبيان الحقيقة وتبيان أهمية الاستقرار وتبيان تكريم بني آدم. ونحن في المجال السياسي أو المجال الدولي أيضا لنا دور مكمل حتى لا يكون هناك خلل. لابد من تكاتف الجهود، لا يكتفي المنظمة الدولية ولا يكتفي الوسيط ولا يكتفي المبعوث، وإنما أيضا دور القادة الدينيين دور مهم ودور مكمل للعمل الدولي والعمل السياسي. ما يعجز عنه القادة الدينيون يستطيع المنظمات الدولية أن تقوم به، والعكس صحيح. أيضا منظمة التعاون الإسلامي عندما تنظر إلى الميثاق فتجد كثير من مواد الميثاق التي تم مصادقته من 57 دولة، وهو ليس بالعدد القليل، و57 دولة تعاني مما تعاني من الاضطرابات وتعاني من الفقر وتعاني من الانقلابات وتعاني أيضا من الإرهاب. وهناك جهود كثيرة وشراكات دولية مع جميع المنظمات الدولية وعمل مذكرات تفاهم للتصدي لموضوع الإرهاب سواء في المنطقة الأفريقية أو المنطقة العربية أو المنطقة الآسيوية. كل هذه الجهود الحقيقة منظمة التعاون الإسلامي تقوم فيها بجهد واضح وبين. وكما ذكرت في البداية أن هناك دقة في الوصف بين التدخل وبين أن تبذل مساعيك لتخفف حدة هذه الصراعات بين الدول، لا سيما في مكافحة الإرهاب. أيضا لدينا في منظمة التعاون الإسلامي وحدة للأمن والسلم وهي المعنية في ملف مكافحة الإرهاب، ولدينا أيضا الهيئة الدائمة المستقلة لحقوق الإنسان وهي أيضا معنية في مكافحة الإرهاب، ولما يتعرض له ليس فقط المسلمين وإنما يتعرض له الإنسان بصورة عامة. أيضا لدينا إدارة قد لا توجد في الأمم المتحدة ولا توجد في الجامعة العربية. تفضل.
Saad Safir, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have to keep our limits. Please.
It's okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
No, go ahead. You can just conclude your
2 minutes or 1 minute. Okay. اوكي. آخر نقطة عندنا في منظمة التعاون الإسلامي إدارة قد تكون متميزة جدا، ونستطيع أن نتعاون مع أي من القادة الدينيين في حل لأي مشكلة ونساعد في ذلك. هي إدارة الأقليات المسلمة في الدول الغير إسلامية، وهذه الإدارة الحقيقة لها جهد متميز ولنا شراكات في الأمم المتحدة من هذه الإدارة. ما يحدث في جنوب تايلاند وما يحدث في جنوب الفلبين وما يحدث في المسلمين في أوروبا وما يحدث لنا تدخلات فيها ولنا تفاهمات فيها مع كثير من الدول الأعضاء. شكرا لك، وللحديث الحقيقة يطول في هذا المجال، لكن نظرا لضيق الوقت ونحن مستعدين لسماع أي ملاحظة. شكرا لكم.
شكرا جزيلا Dr. Aldebe. I will share the notion of the importance of multilateralism because it was mentioned yesterday by His Excellency President Tokayev himself, and he provided the list of international organizations that could also be a good platform to discuss the issues. how we can resolve conflicts without interfering in domestic affairs, how we can do better the life of society, including the life of our women. Because yes, indeed, in Kazakh society we do say that ананың орны бөлек, қыздың жолы жіңішке. This is the typical Kazakh sayings reflecting the importance of women in the society and their role within the society. I appreciate very much that OIC was also renamed exactly here in 2012, and I was part of this gathering. I'm so happy. And I will also remind that Astana hosted the first ever summit on science and technology back in 2017. So there are so many connections between this city and the OIC, which is a collective voice of Muslim Ummah. I appreciate very much. Our next speaker on my list is Dr. Tapio Juhani Luoma, Archbishop of Turku and Finland, and primate of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland. Doctor, the floor is yours, Dr. Luoma.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure being here and presenting some thoughts and ideas concerning the issue of extremism, a challenge we all face in all religions. Dear friends, on a Friday afternoon in August, a little over 8 years ago, a young man of North African origin attacked passers-by with a knife in the center of Turku, the city where I live, just a few hundred meters from the Lutheran cathedral. The assailant targeted women, but two men who had attempted to intervene were also stabbed. 2 of the victims died and 8 were hospitalized. During the court hearing, the man stated that he had the intention of committing a terrorist act and dying as a martyr because he admired ISIS. The man was sentenced to life imprisonment for terrorism, and this was the first terrorist trial in Finnish history. We know that such crimes are committed around the world in which individuals attack others at random, sometimes with a knife, sometimes with a gun, a bomb, or a car. Such attacks tend to garner significant attention, which is frequently the attacker's primary objective. The media is interested in whether the perpetrators of terrorist attacks have some kind of religious background or motive for their actions. This was also the case in the Turku stabbing. But even when extremism has nothing to do with religion, the attacker's religious background may be mentioned in the news. This creates the impression, the false impression, that the violence is caused by religion. In the aftermath of the terrorist attacks in Turku, it is crucial to examine the subsequent events. That same very evening, a joint prayer service was held in Turku Cathedral, led by the Lutheran Archbishop, my predecessor, but attended by several leaders of Christian churches as well as representatives of Muslims and other faiths. Representatives of various faiths gathered together in the church. The President of the Republic and ministers were also in attendance. The following day, a moment of silence was held throughout the country in remembrance of the victims of the terrorist attack. Representatives of various faiths were once again prominent in the morning ceremony, standing together side by side. Images of religious leaders united in front of the camera conveyed the clear message that this was not a matter of hostility between religions. In contrast, religious communities collectively condemned extremism and violence and expressed a desire to provide support to those who are suffering and grieving. All traditional religions are united by the concept of the dignity and the uniqueness of life. Life is regarded as a gift. In the Christian tradition, this gift of life is expressed in the sense that God created man in his own image. Harming another person, the image of God, is therefore profoundly contrary to the Christian faith. In other religious traditions, the idea is expressed in different ways, but what is common is a deep respect and appreciation of life. Extremism does not recognize or acknowledge the gift of life. Regardless of the motivating factor, be it political or religious extremism, such ideologies are characterized by a willingness to make substantial sacrifices, including human lives, in pursuit of their goals. This underscores the profound differences between religion and extremism. Unfortunately, the exploitation of religion and religious sentiment for the purpose of propagating extremist ideology is typical of extremist movements. Consequently, religious communities have a responsibility to address extremism and safeguard their respective faiths from such influences. It is important that this work be conducted collectively by representatives of various religious denominations. The rapid mobilization of religious leaders from diverse faith traditions to a holy place in one faith, as witnessed in Turku, in our case, would not have been possible without daily cultivation of mutual respect, trust, and appreciation at both the grassroots level and between religious leaders. In Finland, this work is carried out through regular meetings between religious leaders and the National Forum for Cooperation of Religions in Finland. International cooperation between different faiths is also essential. My own church has been involved in founding the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, which was established in 2013. Finally, the Congress of the Leaders of World and Traditional Religions is also of particular significance. I would therefore like to conclude by thanking our esteemed hosts for establishing this series of congresses and for the joy and privilege of being a guest at this particular congress. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Archbishop Luma, for really remarkable illustration of an incident, terrorist attack, but you also mentioned the solidarity and unity between people of diverse faith, different faith, in terms of, countering violent extremism and standing basically, shoulder to shoulder on this. I remember clearly the incident in Turku. I visited Turku as well. And thank you so much for your remarks, and we'll get back to you as well. I want to just remind you again, we will have time for questions. Get ready for that. But the Archbishop actually brought with him something that is you'll be the first to see. It's a call to peace. It's a call to peace. And that is produced by the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland. So make sure. It's going to be, I think, formally released when?
It will be formally released tomorrow, so that this is the very first public situation where it is now published. So you know first of all the people
So he gave us the
Yeah.
privilege of knowing this first.
And it will be also on our internet site in English.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So now I want to just give the floor to the Grand Mufti of this beautiful land of Kazakhstan. So Grand Mufti Nowraz Bai Taganula. So the Grand Mufti is serving now as the Grand Mufti of this beautiful country, as well as the chairman of the spiritual administration of Muslims of Kazakhstan. So فضيلتكم مرحبا بكم نحن سعداء في بلدكم والمنصة لكم. Yes, you can clap. You can clap for the Grand Mufti. Yes.
Бисмиллахир-рахманир-рахим. Аса рахымды, ерекше мейірімді Алланың атымен бастаймын. Барлық мақтау әлемдердің Раббысы Аллаға тән. Ардақты пайғамбарымыз Мұхаммедке Алланың салауаты мен сәлем болсын. Ассаламу алейкум, жиылған қауым, құрметті спикерлер, құрметті Қайрат Шораұлы, құрметті доктор Мұхаммед Әл-Сануси, қадірлі дін қайраткерлері, әріптестер, бауырлар, Алла тағала бүгінгі жиынымызды берекелі, нәтижелі еткей. Баршаңыз қонақжай қазақ еліне қош келдіңіздер, құрметті қонақтар. Бірлік пен бейбітшіліктің алтын бесігіне айналған еліміз тұрақты түрде әлемдік және дәстүрлі діндер лидерлері съезін өткізіп келеді. Мемлекет басшысы қадірлі Қасым-Жомарт Кемелұлы бір сөзінде бұл форумды өткізуге Қазақстанның бастамашылық етуі бекер емес. Себебі қазақ жері ғасырлар бойы батыс пен шығыстың арасындағы көпір болып келеді. Осында, яғни ұлы дала төрінде небір алып көшпелі империялар өмір сүрген. Діни ұстамдылық олардың бәріне ортақ сипат. Съездің өткізілуі еліміз бен бүкіл әлемде диалог пен ынтымақтастықты нығайтуды көздейтін Қазақстан саясатының маңызды бағыты деген болатын. Расында бұған дейінгі форумдарда қабылданған декларацияларда қандай идеялардың атын жамылғанына қарамастан радикализм, зорлық-зомбылық пен қақтығыстар әрдайым сынға алынды. Қазіргі күрделі жағдайда діни көшбасшылардың бір үстел басына отырып, кез келген қайшылықты еңсеретін ізгі амалдың үлгісін күллі әлемге көрсетуі аса маңызды. Қазақ халқында бір күн ұрыс болған үйден 40 күн береке кетеді деген қанат сөз бар. Ешқандай адам өз отбасында ұрыс керіс, қан төгіс болғанын қаламайды. Ал жер шары бәріміздің ортақ мекеніміз емес пе? Жер бетіне бейбіт өмір орнату күллі адамзаттың қажеттілігі болғандықтан, бұл ортақ мақсатқа баршамыз бір үйдің баласындай үлес қосуымыз керек деп ойлаймыз. Біздің асыл дініміз ислам адамға зиян тигізу былай тұрсын, оны ренжітпеуді бұйырады. Күллі жер бетіне мейірім, рахым етіп жіберілген пайғамбарлардың мөрі саналатын ардақты пайғамбарымыз Мұхаммед Мұстафа саллаллаху алейхи вассалам «Мән кәна юъмину биллахи вал яумил ахири фәл юкрим дайфаху». Кімде-кім Аллаға және ақырет күніне сенсе, көршісіне жақсылық жасасын, ренжітпесін деп өсиет айтқан. Баршаңызға белгілі, биыл пайғамбарымыздың дүниеге келгеніне 1500 жыл болды. Мәуліт баршамызға құтты болсын. Жер бетіндегі ұлттар мен ұлыстар бір мақсатқа ұйысқанда әлемде береке орнайды. Бұл ретте ислам дінінің жауласқанды жарастыру, дауласқанды достастыру, таласқанды татуластыру бағытындағы рөлі өте жоғары. Алла тағала қасиетті Құранның Маида сүресінің 2-ші аятында «Аузу биллахи минаш шайтанир раджим ва таавану алал бирри ват тақва ва ла таавану алал исми вал удуан ваттақулла инналлаха шадидул иқаб». Садақаллаху азим. Ізгі істерге, тақуалыққа көмектесіңдер. Күнә жасауға, жаулыққа жәрдемші болмаңдар. Құдайдан қорқыңдар, оның қаһары тегінде тым қатал дейді. Мейірімділік пен кешірімділік барша қауымға ортақ қасиет. Жер бетінде осындай адамгершілік құндылықтардың салтанат құруын қалаған адам ең әуелі ізгілікті өзінен бастауы қажет. Жер бетіне бейбіт өмір сыйлау адамзаттың өз қолында. Қазақ елінің бастамасымен өтіп келе жатқан әлемдік және дәстүрлі діндер көшбасшыларының алқалы жиыны адамзатты бірлік пен ынтымаққа шақыратын берекелі алаң болып келе жатқаны соның айғағы. Қазақ болмысынан ымырашыл, бірлік пен берекені жақтаушы халық. Біз ұйымдасқан ұтат, ынтымақ жүрген жерде арыс бірге жүреді деген аталы сөзді ту етіп, әр күннен жақсылық күткен жұртпыз. Жауласқанды жарастыру, араздасқанға арағайын болу қанымызда бар қасиеттің бірі. Ислам деген сөздің өзі бейбітшілік деген ұғымды білдіреді. Мұсылмандар бір-бірімен аман саулық сұрасқанда Алланың амандығы мен есендігін, берекесі мен жақсылығын тілеп сәлемдеседі. Ислам адам баласына зәредей зиян тигізбеуге шақыратын дін екені осыған дейін үлкен минберлерде талай айтылды. Әлемдік және дәстүрлі діндер лидерлерінің съезі асыл дініміздің баға жетпес құндылықтарын, оның ешқандай лаңкестікпен қатысы жоқ екен жаһанға тағы да жария түрде айтуға үлкен мүмкіндік туғызды. Шынында экстремизм, радикализм, терроризм және зорлық-зомбылық пен соғыстардың шынайы дінге ешқандай қатысы жоқ екендігін тағы да қайталап айтқым келеді. Исламның бүлікке ешқандай қатысы жоқ. Алла тағала жер бетін түрлі бүліктен, қан төгістен аман еткей. Еліміз аман, жұртымыз тыныш, халқымыздың бірлігі бекем, тәуелсіздігіміз баянды болғай. Біздің осы елде мекен еткен ислам ғалымы болған аталарымыздың өсиетінде Қожа Ахмет Яссауи бабамыз айтады: хаққа қызмет, халыққа қызмет етуден басталады. Халыққа қызмет ету үшін адам қарапайым, кішіпейіл болу керек дейді. Яғни біздің бабаларымыздың өсиеті елге қызмет етіңдер, қарапайым, кішіпейіл болыңдар деген. Сондықтан әрқашан кішіпейілдікті ұстайық. Барлық діндерде шайтанның жәннаттан қуылғандығы жөнінде оның тәкаппарлығы себеп болған дейді. Әр ел азаматы қарапайым болса, жүрегінде мейірім болса, әлемде бейбітшілік орнайды. Назарларыңызға рахмет. Алла разы болсын.
Мүфти Хазірет, керемет, әдемі сөзден кейін қосатын аса сөз жоқ. Бірақ сіздің мына азаматтық құндылықтар, бірлік пен береке, ынтымақ, қарапайымдылық пен кішіпейілдік деген асыл ұғымдарды айтқаннан кейін, бұл ел неге бейбіт? Бұл ұлы дала елінде неге Құдайға шүкір қанды қақтығыс жоқ екенін біз көз жеткізіп отырмыз. Осы құндылықтарды сіздей дұғалы азаматтардың айтып жатқаны менің ойымша бәрімізге, бүкіл қоғамымызға, бүкіл елімізге пайдалы. Көп рахмет сізге. And let me now give the floor to my distinguished colleague and diplomat, Ambassador Jean-Christophe Possel, Advisor on Religious Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France. Maybe you could explore the peacemaking potential of spiritual diplomacy in conflicts and crisis situations, in line that yesterday His Excellency President Tokayev already highlighted. Monsieur, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much, Your Excellency, for giving me the floor and for inviting me to speak in this distinguished round table. I belong to a minority in this conference, which is made of the representatives of governments, in a conference where the huge majority of the members, and I can see it in the room, is made of religious leaders, religious authorities, and civil society representatives. And it is from this point of view, the point of view of a representative of a government coming from a secular country where religion and politics are clearly separated, It's from this point of view that I'm going to bring some reflections to nourish our common reflection. I'll make it in 3 points. The first one is that I think it's a very good initiative to put this question of religious extremism on the agenda of this conference. I believe that whatever the country we are coming from, whatever the society we belong to, we are on the same boat. We can say that we belong to the same humanity. It has been abundantly said in the course of the conference. But if I take the image of the boat, it means that the boat has to face tempest. And to a large extent, we are facing many tempests. My country, France, has been shocked in the past years by very cruel terrorist attacks. Remember 2015, Charlie Hebdo, Bataclan, 14th of July in Nice, the killing of a priest during the celebration of the Mass. It was a shock for our country. And the threat is still there. We know that the threat of religious extremism is still there. So we have to examine the situation. Of course, we condemn terrorism, all of us. There is no question about it. But it's not enough to condemn, we have also to try to understand. When we look at the profiles and the background of the people from France, French citizens who committed terrorist attacks on behalf of Islam, we can see that each one is different. Each story is different. But at the same time, in each story, we can find common facts. And I would say, to simplify, that we can find 4 categories of reasons why a young French citizen joined the so-called Islamic State and went to Syria or Iraq to commit terrorist attacks. There is a category of reasons which are linked to the person. Family problems, psychological problems, sometimes psychiatric problems, sometimes they committed previous crimes and offenses. They are coming from destroyed families. They did not succeed in their studies, and so they have a lot of personal problems. This is a challenge for families, teachers, medical staff, and those people have to be trained and supported, and there is a responsibility of the government. The second category of reasons are linked to the economic situation. It does not mean that someone coming from a poor city is going to be a terrorist. I mean that economic crisis or economic frustration produces a personal frustration which can fuel the desire to do something. This is a responsibility, of course, for politicians and the governments. The third category of causes is linked to international situation. It's clear that the civil war in Syria, which happily ended some months ago, the civil war in Syria led a lot of young people to join terrorist movements. It's clear that what's happening in Gaza today fuels personal resentment, which can nourish terrorism. This is a question for the international community and for diplomats and politicians. And there is a fourth category of reasons which are linked directly to religion. It's only one of the reasons which can work in this matter, but it does exist. And here, as a civil servant, it happened that talking with the young people from my country, I could tell them, this is not Islam. I can tell you I studied Islam, and I can tell you it's not Islam. But who am I? Who am I to tell this? Maybe I know Islam better than they do, maybe. But institutionally speaking, I have no legitimacy. And this is where we come to the subject of our round table, which is a subject for you, religious people, religious leaders, religious communities, religious authorities. I think that there is a duty, a major responsibility for religious authorities to raise condemnation in the name of religion of violence committed in the name of religion. Pope Francis said, killing in the name of God is a blasphemy. I think that this sentence is very strong, but very right. I can say it, but it's much stronger when it comes from the Pope or from top Muslim authority. This is my first point. My second point is that I remember in 2015 when we had these terrible terrorist attacks in France, I heard many people, many of my fellow citizens, they knew that I did serve my country in Muslim countries, that I studied Islam, that I have a lot of respect for this religion, which is not mine, but which I respect very much, and that I have a lot of Muslim friends. And many of my friends told me, your Muslim friends, they should talk against violence. And I was telling them, but they did. They are talking about violence. They condemned the assassinations made in the name of Islam. But the state of the society was such that this voice was not heard and was not listened to. So I want to raise this issue. I'm not sure to have the solution to this point. But this is something which interrogates me and which I think is a subject for our common reflection. And I think that a possible response to this challenge is interfaith dialogue, beginning by mutual knowledge. So many Muslims don't know anything about Christianity. So many Christians don't know anything about Islam. And when they hear about Islam, it's just when there is a terrorist attack. So the vision that they can have is not only very poor, but it's biased. And we have to fight against this. That's why such a conference is useful, not so much to touch the people, but to touch us, the people in charge, the elites, the people responsible to diffuse this idea to our communities. And I believe that interfaith dialogue should not begin the day of a crime, should not begin the day when there is a terrorist attack. It has to begin, every morning, so as to be useful when there is an attack. And my final point, very short, to be conclusion, is that I try to explain that there is a role for the government and there is a role for religious leaders. It's not the same role. But the fact that we are together in this room shows that each of us, with our own responsibility, we can usually exchange, think together, and cooperate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And I'm really glad that you closed by emphasizing the importance of partnership between government, religious leaders, working together. And that's what the SDG 17 calling for, that partnership, actually, Sustainable Development Goal. And this panel here is clearly represent that. We have religious authorities, religious leaders, we have policymakers, diplomats, and we also have multilateralisms, right? So it's very important to have that collaboration in terms of, kind of addressing issues of extremism and violent extremism. So critical, and I'm glad that you mentioned some of the factors of terrorism and the root causes, and something that we can come back to it again. Now I am delighted to bring to you our fifth speaker. He's my good friend, Mark Levin. Mark is from Washington, so we know each other. So Mark is the executive vice chairman and CEO. That's the chief, executive officer of the National Coalition Supporting Euro-Asian Jewry, the Euro-Asian Jewish communities. So that's your role. And Mark, I understand you are a frequent attendee of this Congress. So what is different? So tell us that first. And then second, tell us about the role of faith and countering violent extremism.
Well, thank you, Mohammed. It's a privilege to be here with my distinguished colleagues and honored guests and friends. To answer your question very quickly, I was going to mention in my formal remarks, but I have had the privilege of attending almost all of these congresses. And what's happened over the years is the expansion and depth of the discussion, whether it's in the formal setting of yesterday or in these working sessions. It's the increasing number of religious leaders, activists, and government officials coming together. And we're doing it in a unique place where tolerance is promoted, civility, and the ability to talk among different faiths in a very civil way. We may not always agree, but to have the opportunity to discuss in a civil and straightforward manner, I think helps to lead to a better environment, both in our own countries, but globally as well. So I will...
So if the audience agrees, then they will clap. So we'll clap for you.
So let me start by thanking, as many others have, the government of Kazakhstan, President Tokayev, the chairman of the Senate, and the organizers of the conference for once again bringing us together. And we come together at a moment when the world desperately needs bridges, not walls, compassion, not hatred, and above all, courage in the face of extremism. And that's why it's so important that the Kazakh government continues to host this Congress every 3 years. I also want to acknowledge my friend and colleague, the Chief Rabbi of Kazakhstan, Yeshaya Cohen, and congratulate him on his ongoing work, not only to strengthen the Jewish community life in Kazakhstan, but his outreach to the larger Kazakh population. And it has proven to be very beneficial for all citizens of Kazakhstan. So often when we hear about religion in the media, it is framed as a source of division and conflict. Religion, we are told, fuels war, entrenches identity politics, and justifies violence. And indeed, we must acknowledge that extremists throughout history have manipulated faith to serve agendas of intolerance. But that is not the whole story. In fact, it's only one side of the story. The deeper truth is that faith has been and continues to be one of the most powerful forces for peace building that humanity possesses. Religions at their best, at our best, call us to honor human dignity, to practice compassion, to forgive, and to build communities rooted in justice and reconciliation. This is what I would like to explore with you today, the peace-building potential of religions and why faith is indispensable in the struggle against extremism. Every major religious tradition carries within it moral resources that directly counter extremism. Judaism offers one principle is tikkun olam, repairing the world, not through domination, but through responsibility, justice, and care. Christianity centers on the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself, a radical ethic of empathy that dismantles the logic of hate. Islam teaches in the Quran and Judaism in the scriptures, whoever saves one life, it is if they have saved all of humanity. This principle affirms the sanctity of life against any ideology of destruction. Hinduism and Buddhism emphasize compassion, non-harm, and the interconnectedness of all beings, truths that undermine the narrow exclusivity of extremist thinking. These are not peripheral ideas. They are central to faith. When extremists misuse religion to divide, it is precisely these core teachings that provide the antidote. Faith communities wield enormous influence because of their leaders and institutions. In many societies, religious leaders enjoy a level of trust that political or secular authorities cannot match. History offers us powerful examples. The interfaith leaders of South Africa, who built reconciliation out of the ashes of apartheid. The Catholic Protestant partnerships in Northern Ireland, who walked alongside communities to heal decades of sectarian violence. Muslim and Christian leaders in Nigeria, who formed interfaith councils to reduce communal bloodshed. And in my own country, the civil rights leaders who came together to end the injustices of hate. When religious leaders raise their voices together, they can legitimize peace in ways that no government decree can. They have the ability to reframe narratives, to transform enemies into neighbors, and to shift societies toward reconciliation. Places of worship are often the most trusted institutions in our communities. Faith-based organizations are among the first to respond in times of crisis, offering food, shelter, and comfort. These networks can be mobilized to build resilience against extremist recruitment. They provide youth with a sense of belonging and purpose that radical ideologies falsely promise but never deliver. They create spaces where interfaith friendships are formed, friendships that make it harder for communities to turn against one another. In other words, peace is not only made at negotiating tables, it is also built in congregations, schools, and neighborhoods where faith communities weave trust in the fabric of daily life. We must be honest. Religion is not always used for peace. Sacred texts can be weaponized, rituals can be twisted, and identities can be hardened against others. But that is why gatherings like this are so important. The response to the abuse of religion cannot be the rejection of religion altogether. It must be the reclamation of religion, lifting up the authentic voices of faith that call us to peace, justice, and reconciliation. Extremism thrives on isolation. It flourishes when communities do not know one another, when suspicion and fear are allowed to grow unchecked. Interfaith dialogue is the antidote. When rabbis, priests, imams, monks, and lay people stand side by side, they embody an alternative vision, that faith can unite rather than divide, that it can form the foundation for shared values and action.
Mr. Levin.
I will finish right now.
Yes, please.
Let us then now commit across our differences and reclaim religion as a force for good, to show that the world against extremism, our faiths can be stronger when united than they ever are when divided. Let me finish with through our work at NCSCJ, together with our many partners in Kazakhstan and elsewhere, we continue to foster cooperation and ensure positive relations among governments and civil society, and all people who are committed to religious tolerance and peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levin, for your very insightful remarks. I will not comment because we are very much out of the time. And organizers not insisting but dictating me to close our meeting exactly on 1:30 p.m. So that is why we have only 5 minutes, but we have 3 distinguished speakers. So that is why I'm so sorry that I will be very strict with the next speakers. We have the only representative of academia from the host country. And without any ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Yelnar Berikbayev. He is from the Kazakhstan Institute for Strategic Studies under the President. Thank you. Please, the floor is yours. Söz sizге verilеді.
Добрый день, уважаемые участники форума. Религия и искусственный интеллект. Новый взгляд на борьбу с религиозным экстремизмом. Искусственный интеллект проникает во все сферы жизни, и религия не исключение. В Саудовской Аравии внедрили робота Монара, способного оказывать паломникам религиозные консультации. Устройство установлено в заповедной мечети и использует искусственный интеллект для ответов на вопросы, связанные с шариатом. Оно опирается на базу данных ФЕТВ, а при сложных запросах может организовать видеозвонок с исламским ученым. Следующий пример. Церковь Святого Павла провела первую в Германии службу, где вместо органа и хора используются искусственно созданные звуки, а проповедь и молитвы генерируются сервисом, созданным на основе искусственного интеллекта. Музыка и композиции также создавались искусственным интеллектом. Однако у искусственного интеллекта есть и обратная сторона. Развитие искусственного интеллекта развязывает руки террористическим организациям, расширяя их возможности для пропаганды и вербовки. Генеративные инструменты искусственного интеллекта позволяют террористическим организациям создавать тексты, аудио и видеоконтент, и они еще более изощреннее продвигают свои идеи в социальных сетях. Одним из наиболее тревожных проявлений использования искусственного интеллекта в пропаганде экстремизма является распространение так называемых дипфейков, гиперреалистичных видеороликов, созданных искусственным интеллектом, которые позволяют фальсифицировать лица и голоса отдельных лиц, в частности политиков и даже религиозных деятелей. Экстремисты достигли высоких результатов в распространении дипфейковой пропаганды. В частности, ИГИЛ обращается к искусственному интеллекту для пропаганды. Дипфейки используются ими для того, чтобы дискредитировать власти и духовенство, подстрекать к насилию путем распространения ложных заявлений. Во всем мире борьба с религиозным экстремизмом ведется десятилетиями путем ужесточения законов, дерадикализации и через традиционную проповедь религиозных лидеров. Но мы живем в новой реальности. Молодежь радикализируется не в мечетях и в церквях, а в телеграм-каналах и социальных сетях. Идеология насилия распространяется в виде мемов, видео и аудиопроповедей. С развитием искусственного интеллекта, контента, созданного с его помощью, стало значительно больше. Поэтому предложение президента создать межрелигиозную комиссию по этике развития религиозного интеллекта очень своевременно и дает четкие указания по решению проблемы. Казахстан уделяет особое внимание развитию человеческого капитала, цифровизации и искусственного интеллекта. Уважаемые участники форума, главная тема VIII Съезда – диалог религий, синергия во имя будущего. У религиоведов и религиозных лидеров общая задача – раскрыть миротворческий потенциал религий. Как отметил президент Касым-Жомарт Токаев, любая технология должна работать на благо людей. Для этого необходим постоянный диалог духовных лидеров, ученых и технократов-инженеров. Мы вместе должны обучать нейросети, работать над тем, чтобы вера никогда не ассоциировалась с экстремизмом и терроризмом. Для этого предлагаю всем участникам съезда собрать электронную базу данных, где будут даны ответы на самые популярные вопросы пользователей интернета. Это отношение к жизни и к смерти, к браку и к семье, представителям других религий и атеистам. Информация, полученная от вас, позволит нейросети отвечать, ссылаясь на достоверные источники и ваше авторитетное мнение. Это также станет большим подспорьем религиоведам по всему миру. На первоначальном этапе мы видим это в виде сайта с разделами для каждой конфессии, но единая форма, она будет утверждаться на секретариате съезда. Спасибо за внимание.
Rahmat. Because, give him a round of applause, Mr. Breakout. Thank you. You did a wonderful job, by the way. And he actually brought us to the different level of this conversation. He spoke about AI and emphasized the importance of using emerging technologies to counter extremism. Because indirectly he said what? The mechanisms of the past are not working. Let's have a new technology. Thank you. So now we're going to get to you, my friend Ambassador Rehak. Look, Ambassador Rehak is a good friend, and he is, in addition to his service at the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, he also the chairman of the International Religious Freedom Belief Alliance, Article 18. So, Ambassador Rehak, without any further ado, let's begin with the first joke that you're going to offer, and then we'll see.
Thank you very much. As I learned from my Kazakh colleague, Sanya, when guest enters Kazakh's yurt, the tea is always hot and the heart is always open. And I'm also realized that Kazakh people have a great sense of humor. So I will say a short joke from old communist times. In Soviet Union, they oppressed the people and they could not freely believe. And some of them succeeded to leave the country, but to leave the country you need permission. So Yitzhak is in the communist office and he get his permission to leave finally. And the communist officer is asking him, so tell us what to write here. Where do you want to go? And he doesn't know. So he asked, maybe do you have a globe here? Okay, we have a globe. They brought him a globe. He looks at the globe and sees Europe, troubles. America, troubles. Africa, troubles. So he asked, maybe do you have here another globe? We don't have another globe. We live here, and the situation is very frightened because we, in the past, we faced the situation when the religion was oppressed, when the extremists grew up to the Second World War. In that moment, the church was not perfect. Many people actually collaborated with the oppressors, and they let the extremism to grow up to the terrible consequences. But they were people who were very brave, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who succeeded to stand in front of the extremism, in front of danger, and thanks to them, on the end, the war ended and the extremists lost. There is a fantastic saying in Kazakh language, and I will try my Kazakh. I'm sorry if it will be not perfect. Yel umitin yer aktar. A nation's hope rests on its hero. I think this is the time where we actually need such a hero amongst you. If the leaders are not bringing the results, the people should start to work like we did it in communist times in my country. The year 1973, Communist Army, group of people who opposed the regime in very non-violent way, And the key was to create the islands of positive deviation. From there, the freedom and the ideas of non-violence spread, and it was actually, on the end, it helped that the regime finished. 1973, do you know who is the baby? It's me, born behind the Iron Curtain. It's just to make you laugh on my behalf, that's fine. Our brains were washed with the ideology, which tried to show that it's really good and for peace, but in reality, it oppressed the people and led to violence. The religion, again, played incredible role, like John Paul II. They help with a courage to overcome those tendencies. Today, we live in very similar world. Two major conflicts, Russian aggression against Ukraine, the conflict in Israel, Palestine, and other conflicts. And I think that the key to overcome those conflicts can be the enlightened religious leaders who are not afraid to speak about the situation, who are not afraid to speak in order to restore peace. Even today in the world, I'm sorry to say that the religion is misused for political purposes. And I think that if church and religious people do not try to restore peace, they betray their mission. I collected, as a diplomat, a religious leader from my country, and we wrote public letter to religious leader in Russia in asking them to help to restore peace as soon as possible. Because when happens like things like Bucha, then nobody, no member of any religion can stay silent, and we should together try our best in our communication to overcome times when people are killed and try to restore peace. This is the prayer, ecumenical prayer, that I organized in Bucha. I would like to conclude, because we don't have time, with a quote by Hans Kink. And before, I just mentioned that the youth is for me also the hope. If we include youth in this fight, like I did in Israel when I served there many years ago, and I try to make programs when Jewish and Muslim children together played soccer, not against each other, but I mixed them in teams, I think the young people can help also with new, fresh ideas and sense of humor, actually, to be very powerful part of this strife. We just heard about AI, and I think the key is to fill up the space of internet and AI with positive ideas, tolerant ideas, young people who are not afraid to speak about violence, radicalization, and extremism. If we succeed to motivate them, we can bring peace to our times. The promised quote by Hans Joachim King is, "No peace among the nations without peace among the religions. No peace among the religions without dialogue between the religions. No dialogue between the religions without investigation of the foundations of religion." Thank you very much for your attention. Rahmet.
Excellency Dr. Rehak, дякую. Thank you so much. We have the last speaker, and we are at the very limits. We have only 1 minute, but we will extend the time for you because you traveled from Italy. And my next speaker is Imam Yahya Pallavicini, European Muslim Leaders Council. And please, You have, unfortunately, very limited time. The floor is
Thank
yours.
you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you. Well, first of all, my thanks. I'll take a few seconds at least to thank Kazakhstan again for this invitation and for this wonderful Congress, and also this scenario, as co-chairman Sanusi was mentioning, which is multilateral, interdisciplinary between institutional policy advisors and religious leaders. Our experience, as it was mentioned by our brother and colleague from the organization of the Islamic Conference, is the spectrum of religion in Europe. So coming, of course, within the Muslim background, it's something that is connected with Muslim minority in the West. And this is where, of course, the relation here in Central Asia is very interesting, because we see the differences not only between Europe and Asia, but between minority and majority, and how we can engage together in interfaith cooperation as a counter-narrative to extremism. Few points is His Excellency Ambassador Posel mentioned the killing, the murder of a priest in France. One of our reactions in Europe was to absolutely right away react, sending on Sundays our representatives in the churches to pay respect and to show brotherhood for the murder of a colleague, of a Christian colleague, that should not be never objects of any kind of hatred and violence. And the other point, going back to the minority, is our engagement in Europe with the Jewish minority. And this is quite interesting because, of course, it starts quite far, a few years ago, and we have managed to liaise with the Conference of European Rabbis, with imams, trying in moments of peace to manage together the challenges of religious discrimination with the European institutions. And Article 18 that was mentioned was actually the object of our relations with the European Commission and with the European Parliament. So it's interinstitutional religious pluralism engagement together to counter the narrative of discrimination and hatred and violence, but also to peace building, to build together the solutions and skills for social cohesion. And this is where the new skills are needed. We have heard, as our great colleague, the Mufti from Kazakhstan, there is no confusion between terrorism and religion. There is a hijack of some religious narrative to propose some ideological criminal acts. So, but what we should do is not only to condemn, is not only to speak out for solidarity for religious Christian and Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist communities, and also for, of course, ourselves, but it's also to learn new skills. And this is where the final, the proposal of a solution I'm glad to present, because it's not only a theological counter-narrative, we need to implement this responsibility in an interconnected world where international relations, domestic affairs, freedom of religion, security, and education are in somehow managed with the guidance of an interreligious cooperation action. And this is where, of course, the European example of EULIMA, our Muslim European Leaders Council, is trying to present a new training in these fields, interconnected, where theology is something that is inspiring skills and solutions for cohesion and peace building. And that's where any kind of boycott is not a narrative that a religious leader can follow. We need to build through knowledge, for a better respect and implementation of the richness, as in Kazakhstan, of unity in diversity, which is also a teaching of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to implement harmony in the Western secular world as well as in the East, bridging between secular institutions and the richness of society. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Imam Pallavicini, the Imam of Italy, I call him. So thank you so much, Imam Pallavicini. We really, we don't have enough time in this, and I'm really so sorry. I have to close, but I just want to say that one of the most important elements of countering extremism is the critical role of women. Women play a major role. And with that, I want to close with a story. A number of you heard about the piracy. The piracy. In Somalia, Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group, they were engaging in a piracy. A leader from one of the countries in the Gulf state sent his advisor to Somalia, asking them, see what's going to happen. We need to stop piracy. The special envoy traveled to Somalia 30 times. 30 times. He couldn't find what is the reason. In the last mission, he met with the mothers of the youth that are engaged in piracy. The mothers of the youth told him, for our children is economical issue. It is a job for them. They get $50 a month in engaging in a terrorist act like this. He went back to the leader of that Gulf state country, reported. He said to him, go and resolve it. He went back to Somalia and opened fisheries company for the youth. And instead of their getting $50 a month, he gave them $500 a month. The piracy, what happened to the piracy ambassador? The piracy stopped. So on behalf of my colleague, Ambassador Sarbaye, I would like to thank you for being so patient, and on behalf of all of you, please join me to thank our panel here. And with that, you deserve the lunch. So go for the lunch. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.